Martha. Martha was cumbered with much business. I mean, she was busy. Not that she wasn't doing good things. The Lord needed to serve. People needed to eat. But Jesus tells Martha, when she gripes about the fact that her sister ain't helping her, says, Mary's chosen the good thing that can't be taken away from her. One of the things about Bible study is that when you have that knowledge, it can't be taken away from you. You commit it to your memory, commit it to your mind, and you'll have it everywhere you go. We're going to start, like I said a while ago, I'm going to be teaching Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther in this winter. And so we're going to look on Sunday nights at those books. We won't spend a lot of time on Esther. But we'll look at it some. But we'll spend some time on Ezra, and I'd really like to spend probably this first night just in setting up the book of Ezra. And let me tell you why I find it important. When I was a little kid and growing up and going to a denomination, I was told that Jeremiah, that Isaiah, all these prophets had prophesied about this millennial kingdom that was down the road. God was going to come back. Jesus was going to come back in a covert operation, in which all the saints were going to leave, and for 7 years the world would just have great turmoil, and then Jesus was going to come back, and he's going to set up a physical kingdom in Jerusalem. He's going to reign there 1,000 years, and they would turn to some things, and they would use scriptures, and I would see those scriptures. No scripture said just that, man, that the Jews were coming back to Jerusalem, and that land was going to be given to them. And then it would be pointed out that in 1948, Jerusalem was given to the Jews by, the treaties and so forth that came from World War II, and it was theirs now, and so we could start looking for this millennial kingdom. Well, I tell you what, it was a great deal of relief to me to find out that all of that is basically just fiction. It is just a story somebody made up and kind of stuck with it. It's very old. As early as the 1st, 2nd century, people were starting to kick around millennial ideas. The millennial idea has had its own footprint in the Church of our Lord. Alexander Campbell, his first paper he put out was called The Millennial Harbinger. Now, he had a different slant on it. Brother Campbell believed that if we would all behave ourselves and act like good little Christians and convert the world to Christianity, then the world could get to a point where the Lord could come back. Well, that's not what the Bible teaches, and Alexander Campbell had that wrong. He was a smart man, but sometimes even the smartest of us can be mistaken. So what we want to talk about is the book of Ezra. And first of all, the idea of discipline. You see what happens to Israel. Israel is, remember the Civil War, just like the United States. They had a Civil War. The Northern Kingdom and the Southern Kingdom come into existence. You had the United Kingdom under Saul, David, and Solomon, the 120 years, 40 years of peace, thereabouts. Then God took the Northern Kingdom away. He took those 10 tribes away from Solomon's son. He's going to take them away from Solomon, but he didn't because of David, because of his daddy. But his son Rehoboam, now it gets confusing there because Rehoboam and Jeroboam are kings at the same time in 2 different countries. The Northern Kingdom is led by Jeroboam. Now he's immediately going to take the Northern Kingdom off into apostasy. He's going to put a calf at Dan. He's going to put a calf at Bethel. He's going to institute, calf worship, if you will. He's going to make people priests who are not qualified to be priests. He's going to change everything. He's going to keep some things familiar, such as the middle of the 2nd month is going to be his high holy day. And the reason he did that is because it's full moon, lunar calendar. And so he does that. Rehoboam in the south, he has just Judah and Benjamin. And that's going to be the significant thing we see here in Ezra chapter 1, that those 2 tribes, the tribe of the tribe of Benjamin and the tribe of Judah are going to be the ones that are faithful in the rest of the kingdom. But you're going to have little parts of all 10 tribes that are, as you're going to see in the genealogy in chapter 2. But think about the purpose of discipline. The northern kingdom immediately apostatized. God allows them to exist almost 200 years, and then they're taken away by the Assyrians. The Assyrians were the top dog on the block. They had the program where they would take peoples off and repopulate the area with peoples from other places. And so that's how you came up with a half-breed race known as the Samaritans that we find in the New Testament, because they had been replaced. They had brought in these folks who intermingled with the folks that were left behind and started this half-breed race called the Samaritans. And the southern kingdom lasts about another 100 years, but it too will be punished. And what is the purpose of discipline? Think about that for a moment. Why do we discipline? You can say something if you wish. What is the purpose of discipline? I have written down to instill self-discipline. And what do I mean by that? A child, bless you, a child does something and it's wrong, shouldn't do it, and so you punish the child. Sometimes corporeal punishment, where you actually spank and so forth. That's done. Solomon would talk about sparing the rod, spoil the child. So that punishment's done. Why? So that child learns, okay, if I go over there and do that, I'm going to get a spanking, and that's going to hurt. So what I need to do is control my impulses, control myself, so that I don't go over there and touch that, or it's going to cause me pain. And so you learn to control yourself so that you don't get hurt or something of that nature. Notice the American Heritage Dictionary states training that is expected to produce a specific character or pattern of behavior, especially training that produces moral or mental improvement. Now, when we think about discipline today, do you think we have a society that's well disciplined? No, I'm here to tell you the reason you have the riots in the streets and everybody's got their feelings hurt and everybody's mad and everybody's upset and their feelings are hurt and they don't know how to control themselves. And I was talking with Marion Grider last week, and then I talked with his son this week, and we were talking about, any of you go to basketball games, high school or junior high basketball games? Do what? You go. Grandmothers go. Well, yeah, I do. I wasn't saying, yeah, of course. Do you ever watch the behavior of the coaches? I'm not talking about the players, okay? Because, you're out there, man, you're aggressive, things are happening. Sometimes you just lose control and do things you're going like, oh, man, I wish I hadn't done that. But, and you're punished for it. They throw a flag or they blow a whistle and they give the other team a chance to score points unabated, because you made a mistake. But coaches, now, the reason I bring that up, because I'm a father, I'm a male. I never have been one to give players much of a hard time. Don't ask Caitlin about that. Oh, there she is. Because I used to give her, I expected a lot out of her. But I don't think I was ever ugly with her in public. But, sometimes referees, Walker referees, you ever get upset at the referees? Man, I wished I had your deportment. Sometimes I kind of get upset at referees and say, hey, that's a foul. When you hear all that, there's somebody dribbling and, you hear the arms getting smacked, you're like, hey, that's a foul, so I kind of get upset with them. But do what? Football is different. Yeah, sometimes, I do the same. I see somebody get actually pulled down. You watch the jersey and the guy tackles the guy, and you're going like, I'm not real clear on the rules, but I'm thinking if there's ever been something called holding, that was probably it, And so you find yourself getting upset. But one of the things that, I'm going to try to do better even with that, because these coaches, and I remember, Caitlin, do you remember that middle school coach that Sequatchie County had, bald-headed fella? Oh, he just absolutely go berserk. Throw chairs and things like that. And I thought, make me principal for a day. Make me principal for a day, because I'd go down there and say, hey, coach, team's looking good. You're fired. Go home. Go home. Don't ever come back to the gymnasium. You can teach history or whatever it is, you're doing in school, but you're fired. Because what is he teaching those kids to do? If you'll bow your chest out, yell real loud, and walk around like a banty rooster, just perhaps you can have an influence on the ref and you won't get that call the next time. At least I guess that's what that's about. But what is it really? It's teaching kids to pitch fits. It's showing them to act just terrible. And then we wonder why they're, upset and out in the streets and, trying to get their way by physically, stopping people. A couple of years ago, I don't know if it's as popular now, but people were getting in the middle of the freeway. Do you remember that? They were having protests, so they would stand in the middle of the freeway and block the freeway. Other people just trying to go to work or whatever. And why are they doing that? Well, they've been taught if you cause enough commotion and enough trouble, then you can have your way. Do we not do that as a society? When people start, the Hallmark Channel, is that not a classic example of a few people, you hurt my feelings? And what do? They go, oh, well, we can't do that. There's millions of people that want to raise their kids up in a moral fashion that don't want them to think homosexuality is right, but we would hate to hurt those 3 or 4 people over there, so let's just change the whole thing. It is a lack of discipline. It's a lack of discipline when parents won't tell them, now, little Johnny, you're not little Jennifer. Don't go to Jennifer's bathroom. You go to Johnny's bathroom, and you act like a man, son. Because the children say crazy things, don't they? They come up with all kinds of ideas. I'm a spaceman. Great, you're a spaceman. But what do we say? No, you better stay grounded, right? Don't go jump off the barn. You can't fly. We stop them when they do that. But if they say, well, I'm a girl, you have parents now going, well, I don't want to hurt their feelings and tell them that they're really a boy. Folks, what is that? It is a lack of discipline. That's what you have in Israel. God is going to beg. He is going to send Isaiah. He's going to send Jeremiah. To the northern kingdoms, he sends Amos. He sends Hosea. He sends, prophets from Judah. Elijah goes and works with the people of the northern kingdom. Can't do anything. He takes them away forever. Then you have the prophet Isaiah. You have Jeremiah. You have those who are preaching to the southern kingdom saying, you better get it straight. You better get it right. If we don't fix this, God is going to discipline us. And ultimately, God does just that. That's the idea. God's discipline, 2 Chronicles chapter 36, verse 14. You know what I did not do was launch eSword before we started this. So let me launch that real quick, if I can remember where it is. And hopefully we can look at these scriptures together. Or you can be turning in your Bibles to, if you would rather, to 2 Chronicles 36. If you notice in your Bibles, we can say our books of the Bibles, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, Job. That's not how the Hebrew Bible is laid out. So the Hebrew Bible, 2nd Chronicles and Ezra and Nehemiah are in different places. So unlike our Bibles, you wouldn't just naturally go from the end of 2nd Chronicles right into, you actually had to move over. And by the way, it's believed that, and I think probably rightfully so, that Ezra and Nehemiah were at one time one book. They were together. And so, I think that's right. What did I say? 2nd Chronicles? Y'all remember the scripture? No, y'all gonna make me go back, huh? 36:14 beginning. 2nd Chronicles 36, verse 14 beginning. Let's read that together. It says, moreover, that got kind of crazy, didn't it? Moreover, all the chief of the priests and the people transgressed very much after all the abominations of the heathens. In other words, what they do? They did exactly like all the nations round about them. And you'll remember, as we studied Ezekiel a few years back, those of you that were here, how that, brethren, I'm going to have me a cough drop. How that Ezekiel, when the first deportation takes place, he is taken back to Jerusalem, and he finds people are in the basement, if you will, of the temple, and they're worshiping false gods. You have some people up on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, and they're worshiping the sun when it comes up. And God's telling Ezekiel, you tell Israel, you tell them this is why Judah, what's going on is going on. Even the chief priests. And he says, the chief of the priests, the people, transgressed very much all the abominations of the heathen, polluted the house of the Lord, which he had hallowed in Jerusalem. And the Lord, the God of their fathers, sent to them by his messengers, rising up betimes. That means over and over. God would send them prophets. He would send Isaiah. He would send Jeremiah. He would send Micah. He would send all these prophets, the 12 minor we talk about, the 4 major. He would send the non-writing prophets, Elijah, Elisha. He would send these men to try to get the people to straighten up. But they, notice, rising up betimes over and over and sending. Because what? God had compassion on his people and on his dwelling place. Now, this is his folks now. Brethren, we live in really uncertain times, I think, in our country. We're seeing things take place that have never happened before. And I guess every country and every nation can say that. But I do wonder where we're going to be 100 years from now. I can't help but think that one of the ways and one of the reasons, that we've had the strong ties that we have in this nation is, one, because of our language. The whole country, for the most part, you can leave Key West and you can drive to the state of Washington or the farthest point in Maine. The dialect will change a little bit. You may have some some accents and stuff that you run across. You're like, what do you say? You go to Louisiana, you may have some trouble down there too. But for the most part, everybody speaks English, and I think that's a good thing. I think it's helped us have some unity. But as we, progress as a nation, and you have so many different languages that are being spoke, cultures are coming in that are not wanting to assimilate to the American culture, but actually bring their culture with them. It's causing, and it's going to cause even greater divisions in this country that already is having a lot of problems right now. I don't think I've ever seen the division in the political parties like we're seeing right now. So as these things take place, you can't help but see some of that, brought out here with God's people. They've left God. Notice it says they mock the messengers of God. And Jeremiah, you remember Jeremiah's carrying this yoke around. He's carrying this yoke around. I bet he don't want to be carrying that yoke around. It's heavy. He's carrying it around. And his message is, we're going to go to Babylon, and we're going to be in captivity for 70 years. You remember what one of the fellows does? Another prophet takes the yoke off of him, breaks it, and says, the Lord told me that the yoke of bondage is broken. We're only going to be there for 2 years. And Jeremiah says, well, God just told me you're going to die before this even starts, and it's still going to be 70 years. They misused. Do you remember they threw Jeremiah in like a big slime pit in the dungeon? It was so bad that when they put him down in it, he, mired up in the mud. They misused his prophets until the wrath of the Lord arose against his people. Now notice this. Till there was no remedy. At any time, Jerusalem, Judah, could have stopped this. Notice verse 17. Therefore, he brought upon them the kings of the Chaldees. What's that called, brethren? That is discipline. Discipline like me and you, I hope we never have to understand. Because when the Chaldean army came, they weren't a friendly, God-fearing Christian army that was going to handle prisoners well, that were going to treat ladies with respect, that were going to, handle infants and children and stuff like that in a great way. No, it's an army. And they're there to break things and kill people. And in this case, they're going to take captives too. There's going to be bloodshed. There's going to be people die that had nothing to do with it. Innocent people are going to die because the country as a whole won't get its act together. And then you're going to have about 50,000 people that are deported, that are taken into Babylon into captivity. Notice it says the king of Chaldees who slew their young men with a sword in the house of their sanctuary. You think Nebuchadnezzar had any respect for the temple? You think the king of Babylon had any respect for Israel's religion? Had no compassion on young men or maiden, old man or him that stooped for age. He gave them all into his hand. God gave the whole situation over so that he could break once and for all the southern kingdom from idolatry. And the vessels of the house of God, great and small, the treasures of the house of the Lord, the treasures of the king, all of his princes, everything. And notice in verse 19, they burnt the house of God, break down the wall of Jerusalem, burn all the palaces thereof. And them that had escaped from the sword he carried away to Babylon, where they were servants to him and his sons until the reign of the kingdom of Persia, to fulfill the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land enjoyed her Sabbath. For as long as she lay desolate, she kept Sabbath to fulfill 70 years. It's also going to tell us about a prophecy. Now notice that this Medo-Persian king by the name of Cyrus, he is going to come and he's going to stir up. It says God, spoken by the mouth of Jeremiah, might be accomplished. The Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom and put it in writing. What did he say? Thus saith, this is the last verse of 2 Chronicles 36, thus saith the Cyrus king of Persia, all the kingdoms of the earth hath the Lord God given to me, and he hath charged me to build him a house in Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Who is there among you of all his people? The Lord his God be with him, and he let him go up. Cyrus is going to send the Jews back. Now you might think of that and say, man, look how special that was, God. We don't know what the situation was with Cyrus. Maybe he had a bunch of people smoking those hookah pipes, in Babylon and wanting to coexist and all that, because it just wasn't a thing that he just sent the Jews back. Every nation that they had conquered was allowed to go back to worship their own gods and so forth. So a lot of times when the Bible says that God used Cyrus, or he used Nebuchadnezzar, or he used these kings that are pagans, a lot of times it's not saying that they were everything that they ought to be. What it is saying is that God can accomplish his work through anybody. God can take sin. Do you realize that? God can take something that happens because of sin and make it out for something good. You might say, Ron, what in the world are you talking about? You ever heard of a lady getting raped? You ever heard her being with child, later on gives birth to that child who grows up to be what? A tremendous blessing. What has God done? He has taken something that's terrible, sin, something that never should have happened, and he has made it to be good. I like to see these things from time to time where people will, like one guy I saw, he's like a 9-star general. I mean, man, he was decked out. Joe, he had it all. And he said, I was a product of rape. He said, but my mom chose me not to abort me, and I'm thankful for that, And he was a great success. God can take even terrible sins. Well, Jeremiah, as we just read in 2 Chronicles, chapter 25:11 and Jeremiah 29:4-10, both of those talk about how long the captivity was going to be, 70 years. And so what I wanted to do, I don't know if you can see that very well, but that is kind of a timeline, because it's always helped me when I can get out in front of it and kind of get an idea of where things were in history. God created the heavens and the earth. Now, probably about 6,500 years ago, Robbie, would you say that's about right? Somewhere in the neighborhood? We know that Abraham came on the scene at about 2,000 years ago, 2,000 years before the Christ, so about 4,000 years ago. 500 years later, Moses would come, deliver the children of Israel. 500 years later than that, you'd have King David. So 2000s, Abraham, 1500, Moses, 1,000, King David, and then, of course, the New Testament. Probably about 2,000 years, somewhere thereabouts, give or take a millennia, right? You have God creating the heavens and the earth. So that kind of puts it in your picture. We think, people want to tell you the earth's 66 billion years old or whatever. No, it's very young. The earth is very young. And so you've got about 6, maybe, closer to 7, I don't know, 1,000 years, narrow it down, who knows. But I kind of want to get you an idea. It's about 4,000 years ago that God has Abraham come out of the Ur of Chaldees and go in, start moving towards being that patriarch, that sojourner. You remember Abraham will have children. They're called the patriarchs. You'll have 70 of those, Joseph of which is one that goes down. He kind of lays the groundwork, if you will, and that nation moves into Egypt, where they grow into millions and millions of folks. About 2.5 million maybe come out of Egypt and go into what's called the Promised Land. And of course, this has about 1280 BC. I think that's probably, I would go closer to 1500. Then you have the time of Moses, about 40 years, where Moses leads them out. Then you have Joshua. Remember, Moses is not allowed to go into the Promised Land. Because he did what? You remember what kept him from going to the promised land? Struck a rock instead of speaking to the rock. You know, a lot of people say, well, you know, Ron, I just don't think God splits hairs. You know, I don't think God, expects that. Folks, that's pretty exacting, isn't it? He struck a rock that he was supposed to speak to. Of course, I know there were some other implications there that, well, anyway, he's not allowed to go in. And you have Joshua who goes in and takes over what we would call Palestine today, you know, the land of Canaan, the promised land. He goes in and with Israel's armies, for the most part, they take over the general area. This area will continue to expand during the time of what we call the Judges. That would last about 300 years, between 250 and 400 years. Sometimes the numbers vary. So you have about 4 centuries where the judges rule. And then if you'll remember the last judge, remember who the last judge was? He's going to anoint the first 2 kings of Israel. Remember his name? That's exactly right, Robin. His name was Samuel. He'll anoint Saul because Israel wants a king over them. Do you remember why they didn't want Samuel's sons to lead them? They were sorry, wasn't they? What's that tell us? Samuel didn't discipline his kids, just like Eli. You know, God calls Eli out. He says, because you didn't stop your sons when you had the power to do it, I'm going to take away. You know, you won't have any more children. Your lineage will be cut off. Well, that's what happens there. Samuel anoints Saul. Saul takes over. Remember, Saul had some problems, didn't he? And he didn't do exactly what God says. And so God took the kingdom away from him, gave it to David. And God promises the church, the everlasting kingdom. He promises that to David, that there'll always be somebody sitting on your throne. And so you have what's called the Davidic dynasty. It will stay in power in the southern kingdom. Okay, so you have David's grandsons who are going to be those kings that start out with Rehoboam and end up with Zedekiah at the fall of Jerusalem. Okay, that's where we are in the period of the kings. With Zedekiah, what happens before Zedekiah, even back around Hezekiah's time? Judah is going to become, Israel now is going to become a vassal state. What does that mean? They don't make up their own laws. They really serve the king of Babylon. And do you remember that Jeremiah kept trying to encourage the king to do that very thing? Serve the king of Babylon. Do what he says. But what was the king? The king was getting outside pressures from the princes, people that had money, that was, his political power. They were telling him, don't you cow to those Chaldeans. And what did he do? He listened to them instead of listening to God, and it cost him. You remember the last thing King Zedekiah saw? The death of his sons. That always hit me. I'd hate to see them grown men put to death. I hear this old man, King Zedekiah, ancient king, watching his older sons being. No. It's believed Zedekiah was probably in his early, maybe late 30s, early 40s. So how old do you think his sons were? Yeah, they were toddlers. Nebuchadnezzar killed his sons and then put his eyes out. It'd be the last thing he ever saw before he deported him to Babylon. What had God, through the prophet Jeremiah, told Zedekiah to do? Do what the king tells you. He made a promise to him, live up to that covenant. It's going to be okay. He did not. They're deported. Starts out in 596. Now, I know these are rough. Some people say 595. Some people say 597 on the other side. But if you can just remember 596, 586, 596, 606. There are 3 deportations of Judah, the southern kingdom, to Babylon. Okay? The first one, you ever heard of a fellow named Daniel? Right. They take the best and the brightest, take them back to Babylon. 10 years later, they'll take everybody, a lot of folks. That's going to be Ezekiel and so forth. And then the last deportation is when they destroy Jerusalem. I wanted you to see that. That's when Jerusalem is destroyed. And so you got 70 years. Then the Jews will come back. And you have you're back in Jerusalem. The temple worship's regained. Religion in Judah has come back. And it's going to stay that way until the Greeks destroy the temple again. Okay? There's a fellow by the name of Antiochus Epiphanes, or Antiochus Epiphanes, however you want to say it. And he is going to rule in Judah. He's the one that's going to offer the pig on the altar and puts the gymnasium in Jerusalem. And so, and the reason I wanted to bring that out is tomorrow. Anybody know what tomorrow is? I see none of you have your yarmulkes on. It's Monday. Very good. It is Monday. Very good. What is a yarmulke? Anybody know what a yarmulke is? Yeah, it's a dolly you put on the back of your head if you're a Jewish male and want to go in synagogue, right? Yeah. What's tomorrow? Anybody? First day, it's Hanukkah. That's right. You know what Hanukkah is? It is the celebration. What's that? Well, you know, they do light stuff. Yeah, they do that now. It's kind of like Christmas, you know, for them. But it's actually the destruction of the temple. The Maccabean revolt, the destruction of the temple. That's what Hanukkah represents. You see that on your calendar, Hanukkah. That's what happens when the Greeks are going to destroy the temple. See, the Romans weren't the only one that got in on that, right? The temple is going to be destroyed several occasions. The Babylonians are going to destroy Solomon's temple. Ezra and Nehemiah, they're going to rebuild the temple. You're going to have Haggai. You're going to have these prophets there. We call them the post-exilic prophets. They're going to encourage the people to rebuild the temple. The temple's going to get rebuilt. It's going to stand there for about 200 years, but then it's going to be destroyed by Antiochus and the Greeks, okay? And so that's why when you catch Jesus' time, they call it Herod's temple because it's been rebuilt. And so you have multiple destructions of the temple in Jerusalem, and then you're going to have it ultimately destroyed in 70, which has not been rebuilt, AD 70 by the Romans. But do you realize there's even two more revolts after that until the Jews are actually squashed in about 136 AD. But that's where we are in this timeline, okay? And where we are with Ezra, we are coming out of the exile. That's what Ezra chapter 1. Let's look at the first chapter of Ezra 1, and we'll read the first verse, and then we'll stop. Maybe the second verse. It says, "Now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom, and put it also in writing, saying, Thus saith Cyrus, king of Persia, the Lord, God of heaven, hath given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and he hath charged me to build him an house in Jerusalem, which is in Judah." Well, I wanted to get a little further than that. I was wanting you to see, well, this first, notice verse 5, "Then rose up chief of the fathers of Judah and Benjamin, and the priests and the Levites." And they're going to go, this first wave is going to be led by a fellow by the name of Zerubbabel. It's going to be like 40 years before Ezra goes. Ezra's just recording this. He's just recording this, and then Ezra the scribe is going to go later. And then after Ezra the scribe, about 20 years after he makes his first appearance, you're going to have, you ever heard of the book of Esther? Artaxerxes? That's when she becomes queen of Persia. So she's kind of in the middle of that time. I think I have that on the next graph. I do. Notice you have this graph here. Chapters 1 through 6 are going to happen prior to Ezra coming. Ezra is going to be the one that kind of kicks off the reformation of religion. They lay the foundation of the temple. They start working on the construction of the temple in chapters 1 through 6. But Ezra's going to come back and really rekindle that thing. And then Nehemiah is going to come afterwards and rebuild the city wall. And so that's how those books break down. 2nd Chronicles, we've been deported. Ezra, he records how Zerubbabel comes back with that first wave, about 50,000 people and a whole lot of money that you're going to see. They bring a lot of treasures and stuff back. And during the time between Ezra and Nehemiah, Queen Esther becomes queen in Persia at that time. And then Nehemiah is going to come back, going to rebuild the wall. And that's where we're going to be in that what we call the intertestamental period, where you have about 400 years that nothing happens from the time of, I shouldn't say nothing happens, but nothing's recorded. No prophets. Dead silence until, boom, there comes John the Baptist doing all kinds of stuff. Here comes Jesus. You got miracles being worked left and right. 4 centuries, nothing's happened. And then here's Jesus. People should have seen it. They should have known. They had the law. They studied it. They had people, that's all they did was study the law. But they didn't see him coming. Boy, let's don't let that be the case with us, brethren. Perhaps, friends, if you're here tonight, you've never obeyed the gospel, we have absolutely no excuse. Man, we've got all this history. We can go back. We can look at the way that it happened. And you might say, Ron, boy, that was more like a history class you gave tonight. That's because the period of time we're talking about, Ezra, Nehemiah, it's history. As a matter of fact, we're not going to look at it in detail verse by verse, but what you have in Ezra chapter 4 beginning is Aramaic. It's court records. It would have been, you know how you have to take something and go down to the courthouse and have it entered in? You know, like births and weddings and stuff like that. It's the same thing. It's written in court language because it is history. The Bible's built on history. And so when people challenge our faith, we can look and we can say, historically, we can prove that Jesus is the Christ. Look at the Jews. Just look at what happened to them, how God said that was going to happen. It did happen. Here the Christ was delivered, and we can have that hope of salvation beyond a shadow of a doubt. You can't put together a story as well as the Bible has been put together. 40 different men over 1,600 years all writing about the same thing, and it all jives and comes together in a way like nothing else. If we can help you in any way, we encourage you, take advantage of this as together we stand and sing. There's a fountain free, 'tis for you.